In a related development, Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project (SERAP) is urging the governor of Niger State, Umar Bago, to reverse with immediate effect what it describes as arbitrary and unlawful decision to strip Badagi FM radio station of its license. SERAP also asked the governor to reinstate the station's license, withdraw his threat to demolish its premises, as well as put an end to the crackdown on freedom of expression. It also urges Bago to end his attacks against the owner of the station, Shuaibu Badagi, and staff members and guarantee their rights to liberty and security. The governor had last Friday directed the State Commissioner of Police and Commissioner for Homeland Security to seal the media outlet in Minna. He revoked its license, profiled its owner, and threatened to demolish the station's premises on allegations that it was inciting violence. According to SERAP, silencing critical or dissenting voices under the guise of vague and unsubstantiated national security concerns is a breach of the governor's oath of office to uphold fundamental human rights. Well, Dr. Amadi is the director of Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. He joins us to look at this issue. Glad to have you join us, Doc.
Thank you.
First off, does the governor have the constitutional right to close the station, or are his actions what you describe as ultra-virus?
Obviously, the governor doesn't have and shouldn't have directly. I mean, if the governor has a complaint about a station, as the chief executive of the state, and invariably the person who has responsibility at least to monitor security, he could lay a complaint to appropriate bodies. So, for example, in terms of regulating behavior of media, the NBC, National Bureau of, Niger Bureau of NBS, Niger Broadcasting Corporation, sorry, has authority, statutory powers to also, investigate and punish, because as part of the power to regulate. Alternatively, the governor can also report to the security for purpose of, if there are commission of crime, now they have to go to due process, arrest, detention, perhaps, and prosecution if they can establish facial evidence of a criminal act. Again, communications, broadcasts are peculiar. If you look at the Constitution, the inconvenient, disagreeable speech are not criminal speech. So there are few very, very far-fetched elements of communication speech that could trigger some criminal liability. So maybe criminal libel, and of course civil action in terms of libel. So really, the constitutional premise of democracy, and constitutional democracy which Nigeria has accepted, is they want to give a lot of latitude to speech. And the reason is that speech is critical to the deliberative democracy, the idea of discourse, communication, that they enrich public policy and improve governance. So
now the NGE are at daggers drawn with the governor, saying that intimidation, they're regarding what the governor is doing as intimidation.
Yeah.
And so they're saying intimidation undermines democracy.
Absolutely. I mean, censorship is not just that you clamp journalists and throw them into prison, okay? Or shot, like dramatically shot. If you create the impression that you write and dare and die, okay? If there's a sense in which journalists or any other person who does communication fears that free speech could end them trouble, not through due process, that's intimidation, and that would dampen, that would be like a chilling effect on robust discourse, and so that's unconstitutional. And so they may be right, but the issue, the reverse is that we don't assume that journalists and media people or communicators generally, because we don't have social media, many people are communicating, not necessarily journalists. We don't assume that they are always perfect. We don't assume that they are always saying the truth. It's possible as we run up to politics, a political campaign, that some opposition parties, opposition candidates can also buy, communicators to sell fake news, blackmail people. Those are risks. And that's why a credible regulator who acts firmly and fairly would inspire confidence in political actors to defy to due process, okay? We know that if you report this to either Guild of Editors or report to the state regulator, NBC, or any other, professional body, they will take action. It helps to kind of push back the each to take self-help.
Now that you have raised this issue, we'll get back to what the Federal Ministry of Information and NOA told the governor. But now that you have raised this issue, let's talk about the media itself, living up to the ethics of that profession. I mean, the governor says the station was inciting violence. I've tried to find out what was said, but I don't know. But let's talk about the ethics
of the profession
based on what you were talking about.
You know, Nigeria is witnessing a crisis of value, and the first casualty is professionalism, not just journalism or media people. Doctors, lawyers, you see the legal profession is like in tatters, ethics-wise. The medical so Nigeria suffers gross erosion of professionals. So I would think that the media is not living up to its expectation. But in terms of fierceness, look at, there are many stories that need to be investigated. Our public officers, you rarely see really investigative stories. So on both sides, they're not putting the public officials, you know, on very strong marking to really tell the story that the public needs to know.
For accountability.
For accountability. At the same time, some of them are also getting carried away, either committed, you know, pecuniary or other emotional attachment to, you know, combatants in the political warfare. And so their reportage or whatever commentary are now kind of, you know, not objective and not neutral. So on both sides, they're not doing what they ought to do in terms of being more fierce, more courageous, more daring. They are also not being independent, and sometimes they could be hired or used by opposition.
So there should be a balancing
a balance.
Professionalism.
And that balance is protected by due process. So if you feel journalists or anybody, their statements are inciting, because the governor can sit and brand anything as violence. In fact, Nigeria today, whenever you hear incitement, I mean, Mr. Peter B's ban from Edo, or supposed ban, was based on incitement. Anybody who says something that could create political difficulty for people in power is violence. So I will take it with a pinch of salt. And by the way, it's not for you to establish that violence requires a clamp down or violation of right of anybody.
We'll get to that, but let me ask you this now. The question I was talking about earlier. Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation has advised the state government to report the case to the appropriate quarters, NBC, for proper action, as it is above, it says this is above the state government.
Yes.
The question one would ask is, does the governor not know what his constitutional rights are? Does he not know?
Well,
because he has even withdrawn the license of the station.
No, he has also, you see, that's what we learn in policy school called executive avoidance of law. So executives know the law is there, they avoid it. He knows, for example, all these stations are licensed by the federal government, not the state government. It's the federal license, electronic, you know, every Nigerian can set up, but if you want to set up radio or television, you have to get license by the federal government, so not the state. So he has no, the state government has no jurisdiction to regulate those.
So ab initio,
he has no such power to license or delicense. He knows that. But look, the point is that power, desperation, and so there's a sense in which Nigerian political leaders are very powerful. Not because the law gives them that power, but because culture and our sense of upstairs, you know, we obey people to worship them. When a governor can call a police commissioner to take somebody and lock them off and throw the key away, he feels a sense of powerfulness. He's not accountable, no limit.
But that's what we ask people like you to do the right thing, like Serap. Take them to court.
That's the point. Again, that's a good point. Well, oftentimes, three things are not happening. One is that we are not seeing a strong resistance. In the past, when I was a young lad with Chief Ghanafam, for example, what we call strategic litigation is very high. Two, the courts themselves now are closing the door of locus standi. In the past, we open it wide. There's citizens' action. So sometimes, most of the cases that Serap goes to court, probably they get knocked off preliminary objection on competence to do the case. So I think there is something happening here. The institutions that are supposed to deal with this are not doing. The citizens who probably want to are not being encouraged by judicial rulings that oftentimes, there was the latest one where they said citizens have no right to participate in politics. So I think the jurisprudence of the court today is too narrow and demobilizing of public strategic interest litigation. In the past, interestingly, under the military, We've actually had the best jurisprudence that widened as far back as the in Adesanya and the President of the Senate.
Under the military?
Yes, the Court of Justice says action polaris, that you have a right of public action. A citizen can challenge, but now they ask you to, they will give you the most narrow definition of interest to sue. Look at our Electoral Act now. Nobody can go to court to challenge fraudulent election as long as you're not the candidate and you're not the one who's claiming to be the one who ought to win. So we have not created a system that creates accountability, gives incentive for people to police each other. And democracy's credo is balance of power. Democracy's credo is that nobody is good enough to be allowed to hold power unchecked. And that's why you have parliament passes law, president checkmate them. They go back and checkmate president. They have oversight. Institutions are layered in a manner that each of them interface in a manner that they counterbalance.
Yeah.
So what we're doing in Nigeria is that we are giving so much power to few people and removing the power that others have, power that citizens have, power that the courts themselves are even abdicating their powers to interrogate and oversight and stop executive lawlessness. So
all right.
That's where we are now.
Before, it has to change somehow.
By constant engagement. And SERAP is doing well. There should be more litigation, more challenge to authority in this country.
Before I let you go, MBM in a branch, the chairman, Isiako Barao. Isiako, I hope I got that name right because there are two different Barao. Chairman, he says he advised the state government to either petition the MBC, which we were discussing earlier, or seek redress from the court of law. What do you what do you make of that?
I think they're right. So MBC does the regulatory side. But if the state feels that a criminal act has been committed, it can lay a criminal complaint to the police, which will now undertake due process investigation. And if the police think that it's a really substantial issue, they can charge them to court. Again, assuming it's a message that is libelous, the state can sue them. I think the problem is that we lack the capacity and the patience to engage the system. In fact, you might actually get a better result after due process. But this sense of power, maybe it's a cultural thing. We feel that we are in power. I'm the governor of the state. And because I can approve and disapprove. So it gives you
especially where they have, what do you call it, immunity.
Immunity. So it gives you inordinate sense. And because the systems are, by the way, the governor doesn't go and block the place. It's the police. Why would a commissioner of police allow that instruction and go and do that? So the problem is that the institutions themselves are thoroughly unprofessional, corrupt, and almost at the level of being silly. No commissioner of police should ever take instruction from a state governor. But that's what they're doing. It doesn't have to take instruction. Anything that is not police, even the President of America, FBI would provide paperwork to justify why they should follow the president's desire. I mean, even if they are corrupt, the system has to move to process. So a governor cannot ask to go and seal a business premises where he has no power to license or open, and you foolishly, that's what it is. Go and do it. So I blame the institution, rural occupants, who are so thoroughly disgraceful that they can't even protect the integrity of the office they occupy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sam Amadi, Director, Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, for sharing your thoughts here on News.